Are you tired of repeating the same mistakes over and over again? In this video, we'll explore the wisdom of ancient Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius and learn how to break free from the cycle of self-sabotage. Discover practical tips and strategies for cultivating self-awareness, improving decision-making, and living a more intentional life. Don't miss out on this opportunity to transform your mindset and start making progress towards your goals. Tune in now. Lesson 1. Identify the root cause. Marcus Aurelius taught that the first and most important thing we can do to stop making mistakes is to figure out why we do them in the first place. He thought that people would make the same mistake again if they didn't know why they did it. This idea is both useful and highly intellectual because it tells us to look deeper into our acts and find the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that are behind them. It was Marcus Aurelius who said, "Look deeply into yourself. There is a source of strength that will always spring up if you will always look." This quote stresses how important it is to look inside ourselves and be aware of what we're doing to figure out why we're making mistakes. That means we have the power to understand our mistakes and grow from them, but we have to be ready to take a good, honest look at ourselves. It's not always easy to figure out why someone made a mistake. To do this, we have to be honest with ourselves, take down our guard, and carefully consider our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It also requires us to be persistent and patient, since the real reason for a mistake might not be clear at first. So how can we figure out why we make the mistakes we do? One way that works is to ask ourselves a bunch of questions. Think about it. What was going through my mind and heart when I messed up? What ideas or views did I have that affected my choice? What needs weren't being met that I was trying to meet? How did outside factors affect the mistake? What habits or patterns have I seen in the way I act that could have caused me to make the mistake? By answering these questions, we can start to figure out how our mistake was caused by our ideas, feelings, beliefs, and outside forces. We can start to see the mistake not as a one-time thing, but as part of a bigger trend or habit. For instance, let's say you missed a deadline at work, which was wrong. You could blame yourself for not being organized or being lazy, but you could also ask yourself, what was I thinking and feeling when I missed the deadline? You may have realized that you were stressed out about making deadlines and having too much to do. Then you might ask yourself, what beliefs or assumptions led me to decide to miss the deadline? You may learn that you thought you could handle more than you could, or that you thought other people would step up. Next, you could ask yourself, what unmet needs was I trying to meet? If you didn't ask for help, you might have been trying to impress your co-workers or boss, or you might have been trying to avoid a fight. By answering these questions, you can start to see that your mistake wasn't just caused by being disorganized or lazy, but by a complex mix of your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and unmet needs. You can start to see that the mistake didn't show anything about your character or skills, but rather about the situation and set of circumstances. We can start to fix our mistake once we know what caused it. This could mean changing the way we think, feel, or believe, making new habits or patterns, or looking for help or resources to meet our needs in healthy ways. To give you an example, after missing the deadline, you might decide to lower your standards for yourself, talk to your co-workers or boss more clearly, or ask for help handling your work. Figuring out why we make the mistakes we do is a great way to grow and get better. Because of this, we can see our mistakes not as failures, but as chances to learn and grow. We are able to take ownership for our acts and make changes that will help us not make the same mistakes again. The first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit, as Marcus Aurelius wisely said. The second is to face things as they really are. In order to understand why we make mistakes and take steps to avoid them in the future, we need to keep a calm mind and face our mistakes. By following the advice of Stoicism, we can start to grow, heal, and make ourselves better. Lesson 2. Acknowledge your mistakes. It's important to admit when you're wrong if you want to learn and grow. There is no sign of weakness in that. It shows growth and power. On the other hand, many of us find it hard to do. We often don't want to accept our mistakes because we're afraid of being judged, embarrassed, or ashamed. But Marcus Aurelius teaches us that admitting our mistakes is important for getting better and not making the same ones again. You have to first accept that you are not perfect in order to own up to your mistakes. We set ourselves up for failure and self-criticism when we try to be perfect. Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." This quote makes it sound like we have power over how we see ourselves and our mistakes. Instead of being hard on ourselves, we can choose to see ourselves with kindness and understanding. After admitting that you're not perfect, the next step is to take credit for what you did. You have to be honest with yourself and others about the mistake you made, without blaming others or making excuses. Being honest with yourself about what you did and how it affected things is important. Never let the future bother you, says Marcus Aurelius. If you have to, you will face it with the same reasonable tools that you use to deal with the present. This quote makes it sound like we shouldn't worry about the future or dwell on the past, but instead should live in the present and be responsible for what we do. Saying sorry to people who were hurt by your actions is part of taking responsibility for your mistakes. Saying sorry is a strong way to heal and fix relationships. It shows that you are ready to own up to your mistakes and make things right. Don't waste time arguing about what a good man should be, Marcus Aurelius said. Become one. This quote makes it sound like we shouldn't argue about what is right or wrong, but instead should focus on fixing things. But keep in mind that admitting you made a mistake is not the same as focusing on them. It's not good for you to keep thinking about your mistakes and being mean to yourself, which can stop you from learning and growing. Think about the beauty of life, Marcus Aurelius tells us. See yourself running with the stars as you look at them. This quote makes it sound like we should look at the good things in life and move on, instead of getting stuck in the bad things. So how can you admit when you're wrong without focusing on them? Self-compassion is one way to do this. Instead of harshly judging yourself, self-compassion means being kind and understanding to yourself. In this case, it means admitting your mistakes while also recognizing your changes and hard work. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, said Marcus Aurelius. This quote makes it sound like we shouldn't be hard on ourselves when we make mistakes. Instead, we should try to be better and learn from them. Rethinking your mistakes as chances to learn is another way to deal with them. Marcus Aurelius taught us that the thing that stops action moves action forward. What gets in the way turns into the way. This quote seems to be saying that problems and mistakes can be ways to learn and grow. If you look at your mistakes in this new way, you can stop blaming yourself and start working on yourself. You should learn from your mistakes and try not to make the same ones again. This means looking at what happened, figuring out what caused it, and making a plan for the future. You have power over your mind, not over outside events, said Marcus Aurelius. Know this, and you will be strong. This quote makes it sound like we can't change the outside world, but we can change how we react to it. It's important to remember that you have to keep admitting your mistakes. You don't just do it once and then move on. Marcus Aurelius taught us that the goal of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to avoid becoming one of the insane. This quote makes it sound like we should work on ourselves and grow instead of doing what other people expect of us. You can take responsibility for your mistakes and use them as opportunities to grow by following these ideas from Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism. Lesson 3. Forgive yourself. People often find it hardest to forgive themselves when they want to learn from their mistakes. Being stuck in self-blame and sorrow, played over and over in our thoughts, is easy to do. Marcus Aurelius, on the other hand, shows us that forgiving ourselves is an important part of growing and healing. He stated, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" This quote seems to say that hanging on to anger, bitterness or guilt can make things worse than they were in the first place. We might not be able to move on or learn from our mistakes. To forgive yourself, you have to realize that you're only human and that mistakes are a normal part of life. Giving up self-blame and bad self-talk and being kind and compassionate to yourself instead is what it means. Being self-compassionate means being kind and understanding to yourself the way you would be with a friend. It means being aware of your pain and suffering and offering comfort and care. To be more self-compassionate, try talking to yourself in a soft, encouraging way. Remember that it's okay to be flawed and that everyone makes mistakes. The way we think about the things we did wrong can make it hard to forgive ourselves. Instead of seeing your mistake as a sign of how bad you are or how much you're worth, try seeing it as a chance to learn. Remember that you messed up because you're human, not because you're a bad person. It's important to take blame for your mistake if you want to forgive yourself. It means being aware of how your acts have affected other people and trying to make things right when you can. Just because you own up to your mistake doesn't mean you have to focus on it or beat yourself up over it. That's all it means, admitting you were wrong and promising to do better next time. Perfectionism can make it hard to forgive yourself. Some people think they have to be perfect to be loved and respected. But this view is not reasonable and is not good for you. It makes us expect to be let down and hard on ourselves, and it's hard to forgive ourselves when we fail. Set attainable goals and enjoy your growth as you reach them, to stop being so hard on yourself. Remember that accepting yourself does not mean that you agree with your mistake or that you are not responsible for it. It just means you're choosing not to dwell on the mistake and instead learn from it and move on. According to Marcus Aurelius, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. When we forgive ourselves, we make room for growth and healing. We let go of the weight of blame and shame, making room for self-love and acceptance. We can learn from Marcus Aurelius that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. If we choose to be kind and sensitive to ourselves, we can make our lives better and more satisfying. By doing these things, you can learn to forgive yourself and move toward healing and growth. The best living is not to be like your enemy, said Marcus Aurelius. By forgiving ourselves, we can break out of the circle of bad feelings and make our lives happier and more satisfying. Lesson 4. Develop a plan to avoid repetition. Making a plan to stop doing the same thing again is an important part of learning from our mistakes and making sure they don't happen again. By being open to change, making clear goals, and taking real steps to reach them, you can be more successful. Marcus Aurelius taught us that the best way to get revenge is not to become like the person who hurt you. Not becoming like the person who made the mistake is the best way to avoid making the same mistake again, according to this quote. Instead, people should try to be better. Finding the exact actions that caused the mistake is the first step in making a plan to stop it from happening again. Say you made a mistake because you weren't ready. The habit you need to change could be putting things off or not managing your time well. Once you know what habits you want to change, you need to make goals that are clear and attainable. Goals should be clear, measured, attainable, important, and have a due date. For example, if you want to stop putting things off, your goal could be to work on a certain job for at least an hour every day. Setting big goals can be hard, so it's good to break them down into smaller steps that you can handle. As an example, if your goal is to work on a certain task for at least an hour every day, your smaller steps could be to schedule that time every day, divide the task into parts, and give each part a due date. Your next step should be to make a plan of action once you know what your goals are and how to reach them. This means writing down the exact steps you will take to reach your goals. For example, if your goal is to work on a certain job for at least an hour every day, you might set an alarm on your phone, find a quiet place to work, and get rid of any other things that might get in the way. Keep an eye on how well you're doing in reaching your goals and make changes to your plan as needed. To do this, you need to keep track of your progress. Think about what's working and what's not, and make changes as needed. For example, if you find it hard to work on a certain job for an hour every day, you might need to change your plan to include shorter work sessions more often. Remember that making a plan to stop doing the same thing over and over is an ongoing process, not a one-time event. It takes dedication, hard work, and determination. Quote from Marcus Aurelius: "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." The implication of this saying is that what we think and do can change our world. We're in charge of our thoughts and actions, and changing our world for the better when we make a plan to stop repeating things. Making a plan to avoid doing the same thing over and over isn't just a way to avoid making mistakes. It's also a way to grow and improve as a person. The thing that stands in the way becomes the way, as the wise Marcus Aurelius said. Never forget that every problem is a chance to make things better. By using the above methods, we can make a plan that will help us grow and get better as people. As Marcus Aurelius says, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Therefore, guard accordingly, and take care that you entertain no notions unsuitable to virtue and reasonable nature." Lesson 5. Accept mistakes as learning opportunities. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius says, "The thing that stops you from acting makes you act. What gets in the way turns into the way." The Stoic principle says that we shouldn't see problems as failures, but as chances to learn and grow. When mistakes happen, the same rule applies. Instead of focusing on the bad, we can choose to see our mistakes as lessons that can help us grow and get better. You have to change the way you think in order to see mistakes as chances to learn. It means switching from a fixed mindset in which mistakes are seen as failures to a growth mindset in which mistakes are seen as chances to learn and grow. We need to change how we think about mistakes before we can accept them as chances to learn. We shouldn't see mistakes as bad things that happen. Instead, we should see them as harmless things that teach us something. Thank you for your feedback. It can help us figure out what we need to work on and help us make better choices in the future. For example, if you mess up at work, don't be hard on yourself about it. Instead, try to see it as a chance to learn and get better. What can I learn from this mistake? How can this help me get better at what I do and do it better next time? The second step is to look at the mistake and figure out what went wrong. Did you not know enough or have enough skills? Was it because of bad planning or not paying attention? Being aware of the main reason for the mistake can help you stop it from happening again. In this case, if you messed up because you didn't have the right skills, you could take a class or talk to a counselor to get better. You could make a more thorough plan for future jobs to make sure you don't miss any important details if the mistake was caused by not planning well enough. The third step is to use what you've learned to make things happen. If you want to stop making the same mistakes in the future, you need to change your behavior, attitude, or plans. Don't forget that making changes takes time and work. Be kind to yourself and focus on making progress instead of perfection. Say you messed up because you were sidetracked. You could work on your focus by doing things like practicing awareness or setting aside time to do things that need your full attention. Self-compassion is another thing that comes from seeing mistakes as chances to learn. Remember that everyone makes mistakes and that being flawed or bad does not mean you're a weak person. Try not to be so hard on yourself when you make a mistake. Instead, be kind and understanding to yourself. Marcus Aurelius says, "Be kind to others and strict with yourself, but not so strict that you deny yourself." This Stoic concept tells us to take responsibility for our mistakes and be kind and understanding to ourselves at the same time. Always keep in mind that making mistakes is a normal part of learning. We get useful input from them, which helps us figure out what we need to work on. We can turn setbacks into chances to grow and improve ourselves by seeing them as lessons to be learned. Some of the world's most famous people have failed many times before they finally got it right. Before he invented the light bulb, Thomas Edison, for example, tried thousands of things that didn't work. He reportedly said, "I have not failed," when asked about his mistakes. "I just thought of 10,000 ways that this won't work." In the same way, J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series was turned down by many companies before it became a worldwide hit. She has said that her mistakes taught her important lessons about being strong and not giving up. We can turn mishaps into chances to grow and get better by changing how we think about them, figuring out why they happened, acting on what we've learned, and practicing self-compassion. Lesson 6. Focus on progress, not perfection. Focusing on growth instead of perfection is one of the most important things you can learn to keep from making the same mistakes. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, stressed this idea a lot in his writings. He thought that trying to be perfect was pointless and could make people unhappy. Instead, he thought that focusing on progress could help people grow and be happy. The issue with perfection is that it's an impossible goal to reach, because perfection is only a thought in our heads. No matter how hard we try, we will never reach it. This can make us feel like we've failed and aren't good enough, even if we have made a lot of progress. Focusing on growth, on the other hand, helps us see and be proud of our successes, no matter how small they may seem. One reason we might try to be perfect is that we set goals for ourselves that are too high. Even if we have a clear picture of what we want to accomplish, it may be hard to move forward if that picture is not based in reality. Instead, we should make goals that we can reach with the tools and skills we already have. We'll be able to keep moving forward and gain speed over time. Putting your goals into smaller, easier-to-handle steps is another way to keep your mind on making progress. You may feel less stressed about the job and be able to see your progress better. Write a chapter plan, do research, write a chapter, review, and so on. If your goal is to write a book, for example, you can break it down into smaller steps. No matter how small your accomplishments may seem, it's important to be proud of them. This can help you keep going and keep your eye on your goals. For instance, if you've been trying to eat better and have been able to fight the urge to eat junk food for a week, that's something to be proud of. It shows growth and goes in the right way. Getting better at something means making mistakes. Instead of being hard on yourself when you mess up, try to learn from them. Look at what you did wrong and think about how you can do better next time. You won't make the same mistakes again if you do this. When you're trying to move forward, It's important to be kind and considerate to yourself. Remember that it's okay to not be perfect and that everyone does. Don't be hard on yourself. Instead, talk to yourself like you would a friend. Help yourself, cheer yourself on, and keep in mind that success takes time. Marcus Aurelius thought that focusing on growth was important for a happy life. He said, "Do not indulge in dreams of having what you have not, but reckon up the chief of the blessings you do possess, and then thankfully remember how you would crave for them if they were not yours." Instead of dwelling on what we don't have or what we haven't accomplished, this quote tells us to be grateful for what we do have and the progress we've made. In fact, studies have shown that focusing on growth can make us feel better. A study in the Journal of Happiness Studies found that people who focused on their progress were happier and more satisfied with their lives than people who focused on their goals. These results show that focusing on growth can help our mental health and quality of life in general. A growth attitude can be formed by focusing on success. A growth mindset is the idea that we can improve our skills and traits by working hard and being dedicated. Focusing on growth helps us see that our skills are not set in stone and that we can get better over time. Having a stronger sense of self-efficacy and grit can help us get through tough times and reach our goals. If we think that our skills and traits are fixed and can't change, we have a fixed attitude. If we have a rigid attitude, we might dodge difficulties and give up quickly when things get tough. Lesson 7. Embrace a growth mindset. A growing attitude is one of the most important things you can do to stop making the same mistakes. It means having faith in your ability to change, adapt, and get better by working hard and learning. This way of thinking comes from knowing that knowledge and skills are not fixed traits, but can be improved and grown over time. Marcus Aurelius talks a lot about how important it is to have a growth attitude. The mind changes and adapts the thing that stops us from acting for its own purposes, he says. Action is sped up by the thing that stops it. What gets in the way turns into the way. If we handle problems and challenges, like making mistakes, with the right attitude, this saying suggests that they can be changed into chances to learn and grow. To adopt a growth mindset, you should first be aware of your fixed mindset views and try to change them. These are ideas that say, your skills are set and can't be changed. To give you an example, you might not like speaking in public because you think you're not good at it. On the other hand, someone with a growth attitude would know that you can get better at public speaking even if you're not good at it now. Next, make learning a pleasure. To do this, you need to look for new tasks and situations and see them as chances to learn and grow. Never let the future bother you, says Marcus Aurelius. If you have to, you will face it with the same reasonable tools that you use to deal with the present. What this quote means is that we can handle any problem that comes our way if we arm ourselves with knowledge and reason. Resilience is another important part of a growth mindset. To do this, you have to keep going even when things go wrong and see problems as short problems that can be solved. Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, insofar as it stands ready against the accidental and the unforeseen, and is not apt to fall." This quote makes the point that life is full of surprises, and how we handle them is what makes us unique. A growth attitude means putting more value on hard work and progress than on natural talent and beauty. Being successful doesn't mean being the best or never making mistakes. Instead, it means putting in the work, learning from your mistakes, and moving forward. Remember what Marcus Aurelius said, "A man should not fear death, but should fear never beginning to live." This quote makes it sound like we shouldn't be afraid of failing or being imperfect. Instead, we should be afraid of never taking chances or growing. With a growth attitude, You can learn from reviews and criticism. People can choose to see feedback as helpful information that can help them get better instead of seeing it as an attack on their person. Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "How much time he gains who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks, but only at what he does himself, to make it just and holy." This quote makes the point that we shouldn't worry too much about what other people think, but we can use helpful feedback to get better. With a growth attitude, you should be happy for other people when they do well. We don't have to be afraid or jealous of other people's success. Instead, we can choose to enjoy it and learn from it. Do not waste any more time arguing about what a good man should be. Marcus Aurelius tells us, "Become one." It seems like this quote means we shouldn't argue about what success looks like, but instead should work on becoming the best versions of ourselves. Adopting a growth attitude is a great way to keep from making the same mistakes. It means being aware of and questioning fixed mindset beliefs, developing a love for learning, putting more value on effort and progress than natural talent and beauty, learning from feedback and criticism, and enjoying other people's successes. "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy," said Marcus Aurelius. If we have a growth attitude, we can see our mistakes as chances to learn and grow, which will help us become the best versions of ourselves. Overall, to stop making the same mistakes, you need to figure out why you did what you did. Admit your mistakes, forgive yourself, make a plan to stop doing it again. See mistakes as chances to learn, focus on progress instead of perfection, and adopt a growth mindset. The lessons we can learn from Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism can help us grow, heal, and get better.